We are very pleased to be in the Levin Performance Studio this evening with two enormously talented Chicago-based and internationally renowned musicians, violinist Janet Sung and pianist Marta Aznavoorian. Their program features music by Clara Schumann, Gabriel Fauré, Fritz Kreisler, and to begin, Claude Debussy. Video of tonight's broadcast can be found at WFMT.com or at our YouTube and Facebook channels. Debussy's violin and piano sonata, finished in 1917, turned out to be his last completed work before he died of the cancer he fought for an extended period. In his final years, he intended to write 6 sonatas for various instruments, finishing only 3. He signed off on each of these pieces as Claude Debussy, musicien français, perhaps referring to his ambition of establishing a path toward a new French style, which might eventually be as notable as that of his Baroque-era predecessors, Rameau and Couperin. All of this probably related to his renewed sense of pride and patriotism in defiance of the grinding oppression of World War I. In a letter, he expressed being satisfied with this sonata in the following way. In keeping with the contradictory spirit of human nature, it is full of a joyous tumult. At other times, he wasn't apparently too happy with it, saying, "This sonata will be interesting from a documentary viewpoint and as an example of what may be produced by a sick man in time of war." So it's complicated. It's also quite beautiful. The sonata's 3 movements are marked Allegro vivo, Intermède, fantasque et légère, and Finale, très animé. Here are Janet Sung and Marta Aznavoorian to open tonight's live recital with the Debussy Sonata in G minor. music by Claude Debussy, his Violin Sonata in G minor. Played for us this evening by violinist Janet Sung and pianist Marta Aznavoorian. Coming up the program, music of Clara Schumann. But first, I have the wonderful opportunity of speaking with these folks whom I haven't seen for so long. Janet and Marta, welcome. It's so great to have you folks back here.
Thank you. It's been a while, so it's really nice to be back in the studio.
It has been a while, and I've been asking everybody that I've been able to see so far this year as these concerts have resumed, just what it is they've done to get through this crazy time and what they're up to now, even more importantly. So, Janet, you go first. What's happening?
Wow, that's a big question. I think now that there are more performances happening, there are certainly more traveling performances, solo recitals, some concertos, lots of chamber music, of course. And in addition to that, of course, I have my work that I do at the DePaul University School of Music.
Yep.
I'm also the founder and artistic director of Chamber Music Chicago, which is a couple years old now.
Yeah.
In Chicago, and probably the most recently, I've taken on the role of artistic director of the renowned Meadowmount School of Music in upstate New York.
Fantastic. So you've been rather productive and busy.
A little bit.
Marta, how about you?
I'm definitely not the head of Meadowmount, that's for sure. I've been busy teaching, performing, chamber music, coaching, all things that I love, actually. It's good to be back. It's good to be back in the studio. Nice to see you in the flesh again, Carrie.
Oh, thanks, Marta.
The time has done well for you.
Oh, sure. That's why I'm on radio, so people can't really
Well, not
tell.
Anymore.
You guys are going to be doing another concert together, right? Coming up soon, as I understand it?
Yes, we've had a few recently over the last month, and so we've been doing mainly this repertoire that we're performing tonight. Mm-hmm. This is certainly for me some favorites that are, have been part of my life's repertoire for a while, and I sort of convinced Marta with it's such masterful music. I think each piece in and of itself, and sort of I think the picture that each one captures at the time it was written too, I think is something that's really really fantastic to be able to experience as you're playing all these different pieces. So we have done a few performances, and then we actually have one in June, one of the Rush Hour concerts that we're going to be doing together.
Right,
as well.
June 13th.
Yes.
Excellent. And as you say, much of the same music that we're going to be hearing tonight.
Some different.
And more, and more.
Yes, we're changing one repertoire, which we'll be doing the Ravel Sonata instead of the Fauré on that program.
Great. Well, let's talk about the Fauré we'll get to later, but let's talk about the Schumann, because that's rather different from what we just heard. And in fact, it's kind of interesting the way you put this together, because we have this very new French music in its time. Then we have, in Clara Schumann, the Germanic tradition, and with the Fauré, a kind of transition between the new French and the old German happening. But in the case of the Clara Schumann, the three romances, these are among the last pieces that she wrote, I guess, and written, I guess, just before Robert Schumann got very sick. So tell us about these. I know they were written for Joachim, and he loved them a great deal. Why do you love them?
Oh, I love them because I think, it's interesting just understanding more about Clara Schumann. We know that as a young musician, she was a child prodigy pianist and trained incredibly well by her father, of course. Yeah. And she had spent many years as a performing concert pianist. But in that time when she was studying with her father, she, of course, learned everything about music. So counterpoint, composition, harmony, in addition to all the piano technique and musicianship that she acquired. I think what's been very interesting is that in her concerts herself, she would often program not necessarily what was in vogue at the time, which was to perform a lot of virtuosic works and things to show off a lot of your technique. And I think there was something that she was very drawn to in terms of just something that was just deeply felt musically. And so I think that that's something that she clearly carried through in writing her own compositions, and I think we can hear that very much in these three.
So this is really the music she would want to play if
I
she
like
could
to
all
think
the
so,
time.
yes.
Yeah. All right, well, let's hear these three romances for violin and piano, Opus 22 by Clara Schumann. And they'll be played for us now by Janet Tsung and Marta Aznavoorian. After some tuning. Clara Schumann's Three Romances, Opus 22, written in 1853. You're listening to Live from WFMT, and our guests tonight are violinist Janet Sung and pianist Marta Aznavoorian. And when they come back, we're going to take a break now. When they do come back, we'll hear music by Gabriel Fauré. Jen?
Thanks, Kerry. Tonight's
And we're about to hear music by Gabriel Fauré, the first violin sonata by him, which I described earlier as being something of a bridge, perhaps, between the sort of music that Brahms was writing and the sort of music that Debussy was writing, and a quite gorgeous piece. Early music by Fauré, who was championed by Saint-Saëns, of course, who described this piece as being magic floating above all else. And I think that's pretty close to what he said. What do you think he meant by that, Janet?
Oh, wow. I think music by Fauré, and this sonata in particular, even though it was early on, it has so many ways of transporting you by the most subtle ways. And I think that we felt that a lot in particularly his harmonic motion, and sort of the way he married the two instruments in the voicing and things like that as well. And it's not to say that it doesn't have a lot of drama,
Yeah.
But I think it also has the elegance, and I believe he dedicated it to Paul Viardot.
Yes.
But he was apparently in love with Paul Viardot's sister. So, if I remember correctly. And so I think I can't help but imagine that there was some of that infused into this piece as well.
Yeah. Apparently, Paul Viardot was a wonderful violinist, and he did write this with him in mind in a very specific way. But it's a gorgeous piece, that's for sure. And it's in 4 movements. They're marked Allegro molto, Andante, Scherzo Allegro vivo, and the finale Allegro quasi presto. Fauré's Violin Sonata Number 1 in A major, Opus 13. Gabriel Fauré's Violin Sonata Number 1 in A Major, Opus 13. Played for us this evening by violinist Janet Sung and pianist Marta Aznavoorian. We have one more little surprise for you to come, but before we get to that, I'd like to ask both of our artists, because I think I was a little bit too general in my initial question toward the beginning of the program, I'd like to ask you folks what we can focus in on as to what's coming up for you both in the near future. And Janet, you mentioned, of course, your artistic directorship of Chamber Music Chicago, and I wondered perhaps if you could give us a clue as to what the new season might look like.
Well, we just finished actually 2 weeks ago our 22-23 season, which was very exciting. We had fantastic guests from all over the country and the world, actually, and then also, of course, some really special artists that we were able to also include, like Steve Williamson, who played the Brahms Clarinet Quintet with us just a couple weeks ago,
the CSO.
which was fantastic. And we are in the process of putting the final touches of our next season, 23-24. We have our concert dates, so if people want to put them in their calendars, they can go to our website, www.chambermusicchicago.com. And we have a date in October, first weekend of October, first weekend of December, and then in April of next spring. So we're really excited for those concerts.
But you're not ready to tell us exactly what those
Not
concerts
quite
will be
yet. that will be the
Okay.
surprise later on, the
But
announcement.
they all will be in the Holtschneider Center?
Yes, our venue where we have made our home is in the Holtschneider Performance Center and their beautiful Allen Recital Hall, which is perfect, I think, for chamber music.
Right.
And so they've been very gracious to allow us to be able to perform in that space. So we appreciate that a lot.
That's at DePaul University.
At DePaul University School
Right.
of Music, correct.
And Marta, I'm curious as to what you folks are up to. I think you mentioned the Lincoln Trio, of course,
we
of
have
which you're
some
part.
things. Well, what day is it? Today's Monday. It's the 1st, correct? So this weekend I have Music Institute of Chicago celebrating their luminaries, which I am, all their alumni. Not all of them, but I'm going to be performing on that Quintet Attacca and Ina Falix, and that's on Saturday. Then Sunday I'm playing for the Pilgrim Chamber Players, which I'm a regular on that series. And then I have Bach Week coming up, which is the following week. Oh, and then there is a concert with Lincoln Trio on Sunday night. That's true, in Waukegan, my trio, the Lincoln Trio. And yeah, just a series of great concerts, combinations of chamber music, concertos, and sonatas.
Wonderful.
So I'm honored and I'm lucky.
And your website's the place to go for all
Yes,
those.
Marta Aznavoorian, I think .com.
Right.
I don't know, it's been a while since I've seen it.
Okay.
I think it's updated.
All right.
I might add that I'm actually also playing on that concert on Sunday with the
Oh,
Pilgrim
yes,
Chamber
yeah,
Players.
that's right. It's
As
Mozart,
a guest with the Lincoln
yeah,
Trio
Mozart
and
Piano
Great.
Quartet
some other
and,
people. So
Wow.
and Schubert.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, Chrysler is the way we're going to finish things off. And Janet, before you play this little piece, one thing that's notable about Fritz Chrysler, those who have heard him play either on recordings or maybe there's someone still old enough to have heard him in person. He died in 1962, but his tone was something quite unique, and there was a sweetness to it and a very unique way of phrasing that he approached. Do you try to emulate that all when you play one of these encore pieces by him, or not? Or is it's all Janet?
not consciously.
Okay.
I think what often happens, and maybe the best way to do it, is you really try to capture the spirit of what is the essence of, in this case, the style that Chrysler brought to his pieces, but also the style in which he wrote his music. And I was actually lucky enough because of one of my main teachers. I had two particularly influential teachers. Joseph Gingold was one, and Dorothy DeLay was the other one.
I would say those are pretty
I
good
was
teachers.
very, very lucky. But I remember having lessons with Mr. Gingold, and he would always be talking about Fritz Kreisler, Jascha Heifetz, listening to them, and his interactions, and I think also he himself was a pretty spectacular player, and I think it was, with all of them, it was all about the sound. There was something just expressive in the sound, their beautiful cantabiles, and I think that's what you try to really capture when you play these pieces too.
What are you going to play for us?
So this is a piece called La Gitana. I believe a translation of that is gypsy, but I think that'll be quite apparent in the music once you hear it.
Okay, let's hear it. La Gitana, written in 1917 by the great Fritz Kreisler. Played for us this evening by Janet Sung and pianist Marta Aznavoorian, bringing us to the end of their recital. And if you'd like to know more about them, you can check out their respective websites, janetsung.com and martaaznavoorian.com. Sung is spelled S-U-N-G, Aznavoorian, A-Z-N-A-V-O-O-R-I-A-N. Our thanks to these great musicians for being with us tonight. Thanks also to my co-producer Louise Frank, to our music producer Max Lebienne, and to our production assistant Adela Skowronski. Video of tonight's concert can be found at WFMT.com or WFMT's Facebook and YouTube channels. We hope you can join us again next week when we'll have with us pianist Matthew Hagel. I'm Kerry Frumkin, host and producer of these broadcasts, hoping you'll be with us again next Monday night at 8 for more music and performance live from WFMT.